This CQPweb tutorial looks at the query download function. Let us start with a query for something. I don't know, let's say words beginning with PR. Could be any query, doesn't really matter what it is. There we are. And it's 18,000 matches, so let's thin it down to, I don't know, 2,000 matches, just for manageability. Okay, so we have 2,000 words beginning with PR in this corpus, which happens to be the BNC sampler, could be any corpus. The download function is accessed from the concordance screen. This is the option here on the menu. You press download, you press go, and you get to the download concordance, download query. It all means the same thing. What you have here is a fairly detailed form which allows you to control the format of a plain text file which contains the concordance or the query that we saw on the previous screen. Let's take a look at what we have on this form here. First of all, there is a button at the bottom which says switch download type to download a query as a plain text tabulation. I'm going to explain the plain text tabulation in a separate tutorial, so let's not talk about that now. Let's talk about the other options that you've got. You have basically three different types of download that you can use here. There are two buttons at the top that give you default options, sets of typical settings, and then there is a third button here which allows you to download it according to settings that you have chosen in this area here. So I'll come back to the detailed options and how they work in a minute. Before I do that, let's talk about the default options that are triggered by the first two buttons. The first button is download with typical settings for copy paste into Word, Excel, etc. This is pretty much what it says on the tin. We assume that one of the main reasons that you're going to be downloading a concordance is to insert that either into a spreadsheet or database, or you want to insert it into a word processor document, which, you know, if you're writing up your analysis. And we have certain assumptions that we make about the normal way that you'll want to download your query in that case. So let me press the button for typical settings. Now, any of these buttons will not take you to another page. It will just straight away give you a plain text download, such as what you see here. And let me now open that in my text editor. And if I drag my trusty text editor across into the video hole, you'll see here it is. What you get if you ask for the typical settings for copy paste into Word is you get a tabulated table with 5 columns that correspond fairly closely to what you would see on the concordance screen. So you've got a column for the number of the hit, then a column for the text ID, for the text that the hit occurs in, then you have the context before the hit, the actual query item, that is the hit itself, the result itself, and then the context after. So if you look here, for instance, you've got hit number 1 is in text A7V, then there is the words of context before, then you've got a tab to separate the columns, then you've got the word beginning with PR, that is what we searched for to begin with, and then the context after. So none of this is controllable. If you want to control, you have to use the detailed settings. If you just download with typical settings, this is exactly what you'll get. And because it's a plain text file with the columns delimited by tabs, if you copy and paste this into a word processor or a spreadsheet or whatever piece of desktop software, then you'll get something that is rather easier to format as you need it to be formatted than is the than is, say, if you tried to copy and paste from the actual web browser. If you copy and paste from the web browser, you'll get all kinds of formatting that you don't want. The other thing, of course, is that when you download a text file, you get all the hits. So you can see it goes right down to hit number 2000, which obviously you don't get on a single screen in the web browser. So if you're going to do detailed analysis of your query that involves looking at them all at once, and you want to save it in a spreadsheet or in a Word document, or if you want to present your concordance in a report in a Word document or whatever other word processor, then this option is probably for you. Let's go back to the web browser again, talk about the next button. Typical settings for FileMaker Pro. FileMaker Pro is a piece of software, a piece of database software that is described in one of the published papers for the BNCWeb interface. BNCWeb is the software that CQPweb's interface copies. So because this is described in the literature, although FileMaker Pro is perhaps not as widely used as some of these other pieces of desktop software, because it's described in the literature, the typical settings button is preserved here. Most people will not probably get as much use out of this button as they will out of this button, but let's take a look at what we get. Here we are, we get a plain text file again, which is called concordance FileMaker import.txt. And I'll just drag this in. There we go. And you can see that you've got a tab delimited line, but this time you have no header row, and the layout is a bit different. I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but if you have read that paper about the use of FileMaker Pro to filter a concordance outside of CQPweb, then you'll understand how this can be used. So no more about that, just to note that that option exists. What else is going on? Well, the rest of what we can do involves these detailed output options. So let's take these one at a time, because these control what you can do to get different types of downloaded text file. I won't take them in order. I'll explain the easy ones first and the hard ones after that. First of all, I suppose the easiest thing is this one here. It allows you to set a particular name for the text file that gets downloaded when you press the Download with Settings Above button here. This is not terribly important. It's sometimes convenient, but sometimes it's just as convenient to download it with the default name, which is concordance, and then change the name to whatever you need it to be once it's on your computer. But let's say if you wanted to type in today's date, so you can keep a record of when you actually did it, or whatever, or concordance of PR, if that's what you want to call it, then you can do that. And whatever you put here will have the .txt ending added to it. So yes, that's kind of a convenience thing rather than a hugely detailed thing. The next thing is this top one, which is choose operating system. The reason for this is that different computer operating systems format text files in slightly different ways. The two main options are Windows and Unix, where Unix includes Apple OS X. Does anyone still use version 9 of Macintosh operating system? Well, if they do, there's an option for it. Most people don't use that anymore. The reason these options are here is that if you download the wrong kind of text file, then you might find it harder to work with the text file that you get. For this reason, we give you the option. Normally, this will automatically be set to the right option for whatever computer you're using the browser on. The computer where I'm recording this tutorial is a Linux computer, therefore it's set automatically to Unix. If I'd been recording it on a Windows computer, it would have been set automatically to Windows. Point is that you need to make sure that this matches the computer that you're on. It should do by default, but just in case it doesn't, or else you might get funny messed up line breaks in the file that you download. Okay, let's talk about the other options. A lot of the other options relate to the same kind of display things that you would have in the concordance. So, for instance, one option that you have is quick display or line display, which basically means exactly the same as it does in the concordance screen. If you choose quick display, then your hit will be in a separate column in the middle of context before and context after. If you choose line, you'll just get one single field which includes context before, thing you search for, and context after. So let's look at the difference there. Let's download with settings above. Okay, there we go. So let me open that and go and get my text in again. So there we are. You can see that because I've asked for it to be downloaded as quick, then you can see that columns 3, 4 and 5 are the context before, the query item and the context after. Whereas if I switch to line and download with settings above, note that I didn't change the name, but my browser has made sure by adding a number that I download it to a different file name. So it will never, even if you keep the same file name, you'll never overwrite anything because browsers won't let you do that. At least not without asking you first. I'm using Chromium, by the way, but if you're using a different browser, then you might get different things happening when you download a file, but I shan't go into that in detail. Okay, drag my text editor in again, and you can see that this time, instead of context before, hit, and context after, we've just got one entry for the whole concordance line, and there it is. And you can see that that's the entire concordance line with the hit word, which is president, not distinguished at all. What we can do, however, is ask for the query result to be marked, basically by putting angle brackets before and after. And that really only is necessary in line view, but when we're in line view, it means that we've got a kind of plain text highlight, if you like, which is equivalent to the highlight that we would get on the concordance screen. So you can see here again, the concordance line is one single field between tabs, but this time we've got those angle brackets indicating the hit. So really it depends on what you prefer. Do you prefer to have your query as 3 columns, or do you prefer to have it as just 1 column, or do you prefer to have it as just 1 column with these 3 angle brackets to indicate the hit? Really it's down to your preference. Let's talk about the rest. The column headings controls what you get at the top of the screen. You can have no column headings at all, or you can have headings separated by tabs at the top of the table, or you can have what's called the printer-friendly list, which is what we saw in the download just before. I won't go through that, it's fairly self-explanatory, we don't need to see the example. Size of context is lets you control how many words you see in the downloaded result. This may be limited depending on whether or not there is a limit on how much context you're allowed to see, but you should see always at least 1 to 10. You may see more. Include URL to context display. Basically, this asks whether or not you should print out the web address for the link to extended context that usually appears in the concordance screen. If we go back, there is a link here to extended context. If you say yes here, then you get the web address of that link. And that can be handy for clicking on later. If we go back to the one that we just downloaded, you can see that indeed the URL to context is there, yeah, and can be accessed. Let's have a look at how it can be accessed. If I copy, if I paste that straight into the the address bar of my browser and press enter, it will take me straight to it. So this is a handy thing to be able to do, to copy paste from your downloaded text file into a browser and go straight to the extended context. So that's why you might want to have it. You might also not want to have it if you don't care. Let's see. Yes, what else have we not explained yet? Download both tagged and untagged versions. Remember that in the concordance screen, if you hover over the central link, then you get the primary annotation shown in that little blue box, which in the case of this corpus, and indeed most corpora, is a part of speech tag. So if you, let's go forward again, if you select yes here, as indeed we have been doing so far, then you will get the tagged version as it appears in the little blue box, as well as the normal untagged version, which is what you see in the main table of the concordance screen. You will get that in your text files. If we go back to the text editor, you will see that indeed in this file that we downloaded here, we have both the untagged version and then we have the tagged version, which is exactly the same thing, but every word has got the primary annotation tag, which in this case is a part of speech tag, after the word with an underscore between them. And that can be useful if you're especially interested in the annotation. Right, let's see, what else have we not explained? I'll explain that one in a minute. Right, we haven't explained this option here, which is include corpus positions. If you say include corpus positions, then, and again, that's what we've done so far, you will get two columns at the end of your download. You can see here, column 6 and column 7, the match begin corpus position and the match end corpus position. And this is a pair of numbers, and you can see there, it's 1212, 2103, 2103. What does this actually mean? Corpus position numbers represent the number of a particular word in the corpus as a number of tokens from the beginning of the corpus. Right? These are the numbers that CQPweb uses to keep track of where everything is in the corpus. Normally, you don't need to know about these. Normally, it's all happening behind the scenes. However, if you want to download this query, do something to the query, for example, delete some bad examples, and then re-upload it into CQPweb, then you have to have these numbers so that CQPweb can keep track of things. The first number is the position in the corpus where the thing that you searched for begins. And the second number here is the number of the word in the corpus where it ends. You can see here that they are both 12, so that means that this hit, the hit of president, or if we go back to the concordance screen to see it more graphically, president there, that is the 12th word in the corpus. So you can actually see this is the very beginning of this corpus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No, sorry, I should have been counting from 0. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. The full stop is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then that's word 12. So this hit, relative to the beginning of the corpus, begins at word 12, and because it's only one word long, it ends at word 12 as well. Now note that if we'd searched for a phrase, let's say a 3-word phrase, then it would have begun at word 12 and ended at word 14. So the match begin and match end are not always the same. It's just in this particular query we searched for just one thing. So we searched for just one word, and therefore one word is all we get here. The match begin and match end numbers, though, not much use to you, but if you want to re-upload this query into CQPweb, which is something I'll talk about in a later tutorial, then you'll need those numbers in order to do that. So typically what you would do is, if you wanted to slim down the number of hits here according to some criteria and then re-upload it, is that you would put this into a spreadsheet or database, do to it whatever you want to do to it, then take the columns that contain the corpus position numbers and re-upload them. So let me just move that out of the way again. And go forwards to the screen we were working on. So let's see what else we can do here. The last thing that we can do is include text metadata categories for each hit. Remember that we always get the ID of the text where each hit occurs. Now, in the normal concordance display, we can click on that and we can see information about the text metadata. In this particular corpus, all we can see is whether each text is written or spoken. We can't see anything else. However, in a plain text download, obviously we don't have that link. So what we have instead is the option to include the text metadata columns according to we have the opportunity to include the text metadata as separate columns in our download file. So if I click here, we have a menu. We are allowed to download all the metadata that is available, or we can download classification type metadata, so that means columns that sort texts into one category or another, as opposed to free text type metadata, which is different for every single text. Or if you click the default option, which is download metadata tick below, then you have a choice of ticking whatever is available. As I said, all that's available in this particular corpus is one option, written versus spoken, so let's tick that. And let's make our query a bit less detailed by excluding various things. So let's say that we want no, let's have a printer friendly list. So let's slim down our file and let's say we'll include full values for our text categories. That's what it's relating to. The things that we've ticked down here, this controls whether they appear as full values or short handles. So let's download that. And open it up. Sorry, I'll just close some of the old ones before I drag this in so that we can see what's going on. Here's my trusty text editor, and here's the file that we've downloaded. You can see that there is now a column after the hit itself, which is here. We have a column for written versus spoken, that element of metadata, and for each text we have one of the explanations, one of the categories, one of the values for that metadata column. Here at the top it's all written, because all the A texts are written texts. These are BNC codes, incidentally. If we go down to the bottom, then we have some text that are spoken. So the last element in each line is the element spoken. Now, when it says full values versus short handles, this is something that is done in CQPweb. There is a difference between, for different categories of text, every category has a short handle, which is a few letters long, and then a full value, which is a more detailed explanation. We've just seen the full values, so let's see what happens if we do short handles. Probably won't make much difference in this case, it's probably just the word written and the word spoken. Oh no, actually, the short handles are W for written and S for spoken. If I can find a spoken one, come on. Where's a spoken one? Oh, there must be some because we saw some before. Can't seem to find any. Never mind. That will. The principle is fairly easy to understand. So that explains all of the different features that we have here. And I think that more or less explains the download function. For these various detailed options, feel free to play around with them. That's probably the best way to get a feel of what they do. Very often the typical settings button up here will be what you'll use in practice, or if you're following the method in that paper that I mentioned, then you might want to use the typical settings button there. Right, that's that for this tutorial. The next tutorial will cover the interface that you get when you press this button to get what's called a plain text tabulation, which is a different style of download where you have more detailed control. But that's all for now. Thank you very much.